In this lesson, we're going to continue working on finding those key features. And some of the key features that we're going to be looking at are intercepts and how we can find them. And by the end of this lesson, you should be able to say that you can write linear equations in standard form or slope-intercept form, given the key characteristics of the line. So to write a linear equation, given the slope of the line and a point in the line, you can use this formula called the point-slope formula. It's pretty useful, but it's not the only way to do it. And so I'm going to show you a different method that you also can use. Okay, one thing to remember about using this formula is what this means and this means. That x1, y1 is a point on the line. This y and this x are just our variables x and y. So let's look at this problem number 1 and see how it goes. So I want to go ahead and I want to find the equation. And I know that the point -1/7 is on the line, and I know it has a slope of 4. So using slope point formula, I would go y equals, I'm going to just go ahead and fill everything in a moment. So I'm going to go to my point, and I'm going to put the -1 in place of the x1. I'm going to put the 7 in place of the y. And then I'm going to put my slope there as a coefficient. And now I'm going to simplify it. So I'm going to make it slope-intercept form now. So to do that, I'm first going to distribute the -4. And remember, minus a minus made a plus. So -4 times 1 is -4. And now I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So that's going to give me -4 plus 7, which is +3. So it has a slope of -4 and a y-intercept of 3, something else we know. And I told you I was going to show you one more way, so let me show you another way we do it. So I know that in slope-intercept form that this equation would be y equals -4x plus some number I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write that as b. And this time I know since this point is on the line, it has to be a solution to this equation. So I'm going to replace my y with the 7, leave my -4, replace my x with a -1, and I'm going to solve for b, which is the y-intercept. So I get 7 equals 4 plus b. By subtracting 4 from both sides, I get b is 3. So my equation I was writing up here is y equals -4x plus 3, the same as what we got before. I'm going to use that method again for number 2, and let's see what we get. So we have y equals slope times x plus the unknown y-intercept. So this method is best if you just want to, you have to go in slope-intercept form. It doesn't say you can write the equation any other way. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form. This is a good method. So now remember, this next step is to replace the x with a -6 and the y with a -5. So we get -5, it's 2/3 times -6 plus b. Now I'm going to multiply these two. Remember, 3 goes into 3 once, and it goes into 6 twice. Positive times negative is -2 times 2, which is -4. And now I'm going to go ahead and add 5 to both sides, giving me -1 is my b. So my equation that I have, instead of having a b there, I can write it as plus -1, or I could write it as -1. So my equation would be y equals 2/3 x minus 1. So now we're going to look at when they don't tell you the slope. They just give you 2 points on the line. So remembering our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Then we could go ahead and we could use our slope point formula, if you want, to go ahead and figure out the equation, or use that same trick we did before. Okay, so first we got to figure out the slope for this problem because I don't know what it is. I just know that these 2 points are on the line. So I go ahead and I do. And it doesn't matter which one's y2 and which one's y1, but this is a y and this is a y. So if I go just in the order that they appear, 1 minus 7, then underneath this 1 has to be its corresponding x, negative 6, minus corresponding x for 7, which is negative 3. And then we simplify. 1 take away 7, negative 6 minus negative 3. Remember, minus and minus is a plus, which gives us negative 3 as a result. So now I have negative 6 divided by negative 3, which is 2. Now, to finish it off, I want to go in and actually write the equation. So if I use slope point formula, there's my skeleton. So now I'm going to fill it in with some numbers. It doesn't matter which point I use. I'm going to go ahead and stick with this one, just because it's first. So it says y minus the y, which is a 1, and x minus the x, which is negative 6. And then I plug in my slope, which is positive 2. So I have y minus 1, 2, x plus 6, and it's simplified. So now I'm going to distribute 2x plus 12, and now I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So my equation is y is 2 times x plus 13. Took up a lot of room, didn't it? Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to look at one that has a little bit of a different result. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my slope. So I'm going to do y take away y, and x take away x. As a result, I get negative 3 plus 3, because remember, minus and minus makes a plus, which is 0, and negative 8 plus 2, which is negative 6. 0 on the top, we're okay, because it gives us a 0 exactly. 0 on the bottom, no way. I'll write that in class. Okay, 0 over negative 6 gives us 0, which means we have no slope. And if you remember from our last lesson, no slope means it's a horizontal line. And all horizontal lines are just y equals a number. Well, what number are you seeing repeated for the y? Negative 3. Okay, now back to Hontas for a moment is linear equations. Notice that we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. So in these problems, instead of telling us here's a slope and here's a point, it tells us here's an equation and here's a point. And it tells us a relationship between that line and the other line we're trying to figure out. And that new line has this point on it. This is the line that they're giving us to compare it to. Okay, so parallel, we know, going in the same direction means equal slopes. See that equal sign that looks like parallel? That's why. Okay, so if they're parallel, they have the same slope. So my equation doesn't tell me the slope of the first line. So I'm going to get it in slope-intercept form. So I'm subtracting 3x and dividing by negative 4. So what is my slope? Well, if I go back and look at the coefficient of x, I get 3/4. So I know that this line has a slope of 3/4, and I know my new line has that exact same slope. So we know that since it has the exact same slope, if I go ahead and I use slope point formula, okay, I'm going to put in 3/4 for the slope, and I'm going to put in this value for my x and this value for my y. Y minus 1, x minus negative 8 is x plus 8. And now I'm going to distribute 3/4 times x and 3/4 times 8. Remember, when I do 3/4 times 8, 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 8 twice, 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1, and I get 6. Now by adding 1 to both sides, I get it in slope-intercept form, which gives me y equals 3/4 x plus 7. Okay, now let's look at the relationship between two lines that instead are perpendicular to each other. So this time we do have it in slope-intercept form. So we know that this line, y equals 2x plus 4, is going to look like this when we graph it. And the line that's going to be perpendicular to it has to have a negative slope, but remember they're reciprocals of each other. So if my original line, which has a slope of 2 over 1, then my perpendicular line has to have a reciprocal, means flip the numbers, and then the opposite of that would be negative 1/2. So they're opposite reciprocals. So new line has a slope of negative 1/2 and passes through the point -2, 3. So let's go from there. So I'm going to use point slope formula minus y slope parentheses x minus x. Simplify minus and negative makes a positive. And now I go ahead and distribute my slope. Negative 1/2 x. And then negative 1/2 times 2 is minus 1. And I continue up here. So now I'm going to add 3 to both sides, giving me y equals negative 1/2 x. And then negative 1 plus 3 would make positive 2. So I know it's my new line that's perpendicular is going to have a slope of negative 1/2 and a y-intercept of 2. Thank you.